Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 6 of the Shameless Plug podcast. I almost forgot it again. I'm TMT Coco, and I'm joined by a man who introduces himself.
How's it going? It's Lick My Sock 117 here today.
That's the one, as with every week. Still don't have a guest. We're working on that. Don't worry about it. And we're gonna. I want to start this off with, just expressing pain. Pain in the fact that I think I need to start getting into the black market a little bit and maybe sell a kidney to be able to afford a home. I I recently looked at houses, got a little more serious into looking into it, and it is insane how much houses cost. Like, have you taken a gander at how prices have just basically doubled in the past 3 years?
Oh, absolutely. Like, if you don't spend at least 250,000 Canadian, you're gonna get an absolute, like a literal doghouse on the side of the road, and not even anywhere special. Like, it's gonna be out in the boonies, and it's gonna leak. Like, the housing
Well,
market is insane.
I legitimately can't. Like, 250 was originally pre-COVID and everybody moving out of the city and stuff. Like, I thought 250 was starter home price, like somewhere around there. But I legitimately can't find anything that's under like 350,000, I'd say. And 350,000 in my head, it's like, wow, that's probably a pretty good house. No, not at all. Like, 350 gets you a place in the middle of the woods. 50% chance that the previous owner was murdered there, and you might get a front door.
Is that a game
In
changer
my
for you?
experience,
If somebody was murdered there?
I thought you were gonna say the front door. I was gonna say, hey, kind of. I mean, it depends on how and like, are the people responsible for doing the murder still around? Are they like, are they in jail for life? Is there something in the house they want?
So we have
Like,
to
is it one
think
of those
about
situations?
a possible haunting, but you don't have to think about just replacing a door.
I mean, I wasn't even thinking of hauntings. I was thinking of like them coming back and like tearing up my floorboards, and there's just like a cache of like guns or drugs or something under there.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
I mean, I guess hauntings because ghosts are real, right? That's that's been confirmed. We saw dust on a camera once, so we know ghosts are around.
We.
Well, people on the internet.
Okay.
I'm trying to blend in with
Society.
the new crowd. Yeah,
That's for sure.
but yeah. So I looked, and there was one house not very far away from where I live, and I have to be careful how I say this without doxing myself. But I looked at this one place, 469,000, which again in my head should be a mansion. It wasn't. Uh, but I look online and I'm like, okay, well, it has potential. It's pretty much the cheapest house in the area, aside from one that was like 20,000 less, and it was a shack. Like that's the kind of place where you worry about the front door being included or not. And so I look at all the pictures and stuff, and you could see where they had pictures hanging on the wall. There was just, I don't know if it was dirt or nicotine or what around it. So I'm like, okay, so there's work for sure. I'm not buying a house that like I go to, I drop my stuff in and I'm done. No, almost $500,000 doesn't get you that anymore. And I'm like, well, okay, it realistically it wasn't too much work. So I'm like, okay, uh, I guess I can book a time to go visit this place and see it. Like originally, I wasn't interested. And the more I looked at, it, I'm like, yeah, this has potential. I guess like I should look at it. It was like a 3 bedroom, 1.5 bath or something, so it wasn't horrible for like a starter place. It wasn't just a 1 bedroom log cabin. And I looked on Google Maps. And I'm like, well, this looks totally different because the Google Maps is in the summer and this was in the winter, so I couldn't get a feel of like what the yard looked like or anything like that. And Google Maps, it looked like they cut down a bunch of trees. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll just drive there and just take a look beforehand because it's only like a 2 minute drive from my house. And at the time, like, I probably look super sketchy because I get in the car, I've got a pair of binoculars, I'm wearing just a hoodie, with the hood up. I was tempted to just get the sunglasses and just commit to the look that I was about to like scout this house out and rob them that night. But I'm driving up. I'm like, all right, this street ain't bad. Like I know the area. It's in town. It's a small town, but still. And I'm looking for it. I can't find it. I go over this little hill. I get there. I look at the house. I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's not bad. Nice yard. Wasn't huge, but big enough. I mean, compared to like a city house, I guess any yard is a good yard. But yeah, I'm looking at it, and then I look at the for sale sign, and I notice that right above the for sale sign, sold. It was gone. It wasn't even on the market. So I spent probably like 2 hours looking at this place, like checking my finances to see like how much it would cost and stuff. Get there, scout the place out, and it's not even on the market. Like why is it on the website if it's sold?
It's
It
been
it
happening
I
a lot in the area, like in the town we grew up in, the town you're referring to. My dad, he's still watching like the market because he's got nothing better to do but to watch the real estate, and he cares about the price of his house. And
yeah.
yeah, a few houses in town there, like they've gone up for sale. Where a house that you would think like normally like a 3 bedroom like raised bungalow, just like on a like on a town street, with like half an acre all around. You'd think
Yeah.
that's maybe a $300,000 house, but these houses are going for 6, 7, even higher, and they're selling as fat. Like there's even bidding wars at those prices. Like
And it's
everybody,
important to note this town is in the middle of nowhere. Like it's 40 minutes if you want to go somewhere. At least. And there's like it's still as if it's in this like a city area with lots of stuff around it. It's insane.
I mean, hey, we,
Like,
we got curbs.
well, I the house I'm in now didn't. My street just
That's
got
true.
ditches that ended up being a nightmare. My brother got stuck in the ditch a couple weeks ago. I had to pull him out. Like, uh, all we needed was curbs, and we would have been great. But no,
The
they
ditch
couldn't do
that
it for us.
this like in the town that doesn't even have high speed fiber op internet, and
Oh,
they're
it
trying to
does.
put it
It's
in.
up to everybody's house. They just won't hook it up.
Like there's not like everybody's on well water. Everybody has a septic tank. Obviously the main draw is the lake, right? Like everybody
Yeah.
wants to escape the city, get a little bit of that country life. I think the location of the town is absolutely perfect. Like I would love to buy a house there, but it's just not in our price range. Nor is it like any good for our careers at all. Like we need to be near the ocean, more or less. But
Yeah, true.
like even
It,
so, even here in Newfoundland, like on the island, like if you don't buy a house in St. John's, like everything you ever need is going to be a 40-minute drive. Same situation, except the price drop is like drastically different. Like in comparison, like a house in St. John's, like you're probably going to go 350 to 450,000, like in that range, more or
right.
less, unless you're getting like a really nice modern house. And then of course there's
Yeah.
like the lower end of the spectrum where you don't know if the door is going to be there. But like as soon as you go 15 minutes outside the city, if you spend 200,000, you're going to get a beautiful house. The only problem is the amenities, right? Like you're not going to have the internet. You know what I mean? Unless you get like the satellite internet. Um,
Good old Musk net. Yeah.
like you're going to be on a well, and you're going to be on a holding tank, and you're probably not even going to have like there's no natural gas or anything on the island here, so it's all going to be electric, propane, or oil
Oh yeah.
heating. So that's one of the benefits of being on the mainland for me would be like the natural gas side of things because that's probably the cheapest way to heat your house.
Oh, for sure. We switched like probably 8 years ago now or something like that. But it's a huge difference and so much easier. Like there's no hassle whatsoever.
Just turn it on.
Yeah. And there's like a 0.001% chance that your whole house explodes. But aside from that,
Like I'm
we're
never
good.
gonna spend like $400,000 on a house that I have to cut wood. I'm sorry. Like I'm just, it's not.
Yeah, no, I've had enough of that. Like we did that for a while, and then natural gas came, and like, why would we ever cut another piece of wood in our lives? But it is kind of the same thing here in a sense. Like I was looking at places. It it's a bit more distance. Like I live in southern Ontario, and I was looking at places in northern ish Ontario, like not all the way up, pretty much in the Arctic, but north to the point where you're out of any big cities, and for less than 500,000, you can get really, really, really nice houses. But to get to like Toronto or any large city, it's like 10 hours. Like it's ridiculous if you ever had to go anywhere. And that's my biggest problem is work. Like I need to be near the city, but anything near the city is insane. And it's such a frustrating thing to say, okay, I can either get this really good house, but I can't for work, or I can get this just rundown piece of garbage for the exact same price. The only difference is where it's sitting. And like you can't win that game. Like there's it, unless you, please support this channel and maybe our Twitch channels so I can get rich and not need to have a real job. And then, not that content creation isn't a real job. I'm going to stop digging this hole. So,
Jesus.
hypothetical question in this smooth transition. Would you rather only ever, and this applies to existing and future, only have single player games or multiplayer games? Like,
I was wondering if you were
those are
gonna
the
go
only ones that
first,
exist.
but
What do you say?
when you say multiplayer games, are you saying online multiplayer games?
That was primarily what I was thinking, yeah, but no, I'm gonna hard cut it single player or multiplayer,
Damn,
online or offline.
single player for me for sure.
Yeah, I like obviously multiplayer games are huge. Like even in our case, when we hang out, we're usually playing a multiplayer game. But single player is just like one you can still talk about single player. You can sit beside someone that's playing a single player game. I feel like we've done that many times in the past, growing up and stuff. And like single player games, excluding like Cyberpunk, because that just went horrible, they seem to always be made to such a better quality than multiplayer. Like the typical targets for multiplayer, I'd say, are like COD and Battlefield, especially more recently where they've just felt really, really rushed. I feel like single player, quality wise alone, is always significantly better than multiplayer.
I agree with you 100%. Um, like I'm a sucker for a good story, whether it be a movie, a book, or a video game. And I
Yeah.
like you were saying, I feel like there's more quality, there's more love into a single player experience than there would be in any multiplayer. But at the same time, the multiplayer is so good when you just feel like it's more of the social aspect of it, right? Like whether you're good or bad at a game, you're playing with other people. So I definitely see the appeal of both.
Yeah, yeah, like I for sure enjoy a lot of multiplayer games, but I also feel like single player is like I've never played Dark Souls or any of those type of like just uber difficult single player, but I feel like in general single player is a much more like relaxed and less frustrating experience too. Like you play multiplayer, it just any game that has ranked, I won't let myself play anymore because I went down the rabbit hole of ranked League of Legends for probably 4 or 5 years, and God, what a horrible experience that is. Like when I was in it, it's like, well, yeah, I'm gonna climb, I'm gonna be good, it's great. But there were so many nights where I was like, I didn't enjoy any of those games I just played because at that point I didn't feel like I was really playing it for fun. I was just playing it to win,
That's
and
a
there was like I
it's a rabbit hole in many games. Like whether it's League of Legends or other people playing Overwatch or anything. As soon as there's like a ranked one, now some people they live for that grind, right? Like they live for it and they have the skill to like follow up with it. Me, I
yeah
just don't care
I
enough. I do
Yeah,
gaming for a
I
relaxing experience, not as an absolute grind. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, go on.
I like I enjoy being competitive, but I hate it at the same time because most games I'm mediocre at. So it never really goes the way you plan it. Like you always think, "Oh yeah, I can win a couple games here easy. I'll get promoted." Blah blah blah. I remember playing in university, like first year university. I had one weekend, both my roommates were gone, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna play League, and I started playing at night, and it most people have that point in time where they're like, okay, one more game. Except I screwed up and said one more win, and that was probably at about maybe 10 p.m. I said, okay, one more win in League of Legends. I'm going to bed. I went to bed at I believe it was 7:45 a.m. the next day.
Worth it.
But it wasn't like there's been so many games where I stayed up and I enjoyed it. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. But man, that was a horrible night. Like so many hours, and then I finally got it at the end. And I didn't feel good. I felt relieved. I think it was like the anti subathon. Like you get subathon, you get this like positive reinforcement to keep going, and then I guess you get the little bit of relief. Like okay, I'm done. I can go to bed. But this was just negative reinforcement. It was like, no, you're not done. You suck. Keep going.
I've never played League or Overwatch, but like, how long does a typical League match last
Oh,
for?
that's what the worst thing about League was. It's like 45 minutes to an hour that
Damn.
you're stuck in a game. Like you can surrender at 20 minutes, so you're guaranteed 20 minutes of just pain. And obviously, I very rarely like to surrender, so you're stuck in there for 30 or more. Overwatch isn't as bad; it's usually quicker, but yeah, League is just such a time sink. I try to avoid it. But back to just the single player multiplayer thing. I think single player has a lot. Like if you were to break into the two pools, I guess I feel like single player has significantly more uh, like game modes
Has more
to it,
content.
or not game modes, but like types of games. Because like everything that is multiplayer could be single player, pretty much. Like League is probably the hardest one to put into single player, but it's just an adaptation of real time strategy. Like League is a copy of Dota, which was an offshoot from World of Warcraft, which was a strategy game. So like any multiplayer stuff like GTA Online, you got just GTA offline. Battlefield, Call of Duty, they started as games with campaigns. Everything like that comes over, and then you have single player only stuff like your well, yeah, I'm gonna say Assassin's Creed. I know it had multiplayer at one point, but it was garbage. Like there's just so many more single player things to play.
Now, if you were the game maker side of things, I would say that you would want to make more. If you had to make the choice, they would say all multiplayer games because that's where the money's at,
Oh yeah, all the microtransactions and
right?
everything else.
Like
100%.
like back to the rank thing right quick. Like, I don't care about the rank unless like there's some kind of enticing reward for me ranking up. But like, I wouldn't rank up just to say, "Wow, look at me, I'm so good. Look at this rank." But if I rank up and then I get like a fancy shovel for whatever, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like League kind of had that because every year if you got gold or higher, you would get like an exclusive skin. But there's so many different champions. If it's not one that you play, it really isn't enticing, anyways. And then if you get to like challenger, you get a, which is the highest level. Like the people that play in the competitive scene, they get like a jacket. So that's not enough for me to go for.
Like a real life jacket.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll send you.
I'd never.
Yeah, but yeah, 100%. If you're making a game, go multiplayer. But at the same time, I'd still make a single player if I made a game because it's significantly easier for the most part.
Is there any single player game that you wish had a good multiplayer that doesn't? off the top of your
Um,
head? I can think of one like right quick.
the
I wish
the
Assassin's Creed Black Flag had co-op multiplayer.
so Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves, but like Assassin's Creed and not
Yeah, yeah, I could
Bat
see it.
Crash Bandicoot. Like,
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind for me was Star Wars Republic Commando, just because I like that game so much and it's such a good single player game. But it did have a multiplayer and it sucked. And I don't know how they do. Well, okay, never mind. They could just do co-op. If we're counting co-op as multiplayer, 100% that's the game I want to have a good multiplayer put in place. Like co-op Republic Commando would be amazing.
I'm trying to remember the Republic Commando multiplayer, but it was just kind of like Halo, so you could be
It
a clone or a
it was
Trandoshan, right? And that was
yeah, it was 4v4 multiplayer in like little small arena maps.
Halo.
Pretty much. It was pretty bare bones, but it was an early game and like it I don't think it ever caught on. Like I wasn't active in the original Xbox online, but I can't see it catching on when Halo was out and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It
for
just
sure.
wasn't that good. But yeah,
Like
co-op for that would be amazing.
like I would say like, oh man, I wish like Knights of the Old Republic had like, but like just like with the gameplay, you can't like the style of
Yeah, it's
gameplay.
hard to have two people make decisions and still have them have
Yeah,
the same story unless they all make the same choices, I guess. But yeah, you obviously have to change the story to have like incorporate two main characters. So you don't just have one person die off or something.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, yeah, I can see that. On the topic of Star Wars, since we're here, the last episode we had last week, on that day it came out, the last episode of Book of Boba Fett was released, and I hadn't seen it before we recorded, so we didn't talk about it. But we've both seen it now. It wrapped up like that's all the episodes for Book of Boba Fett. They haven't said anything about like a second season or anything like that, and I think it makes sense. So, for anyone that doesn't want spoilers, we'll probably put something either on screen like a card or a time or something, so you can see where to skip to if you don't want to be spoiled, I guess. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the final episode? We'll talk about that first, and then we'll go over like the whole series, I guess.
The final episode was it was good. Like it was okay. I wouldn't say it was great, um, but it wrapped up more or less everything it needed to wrap up from what was going on there. It's unfortunate that it turned into a more of a Mandalorian season 2.5. I don't know if they should have just called it the Star Wars show. There was just so many things going on there, but by the end, they wrapped it up as good as they could, in my opinion. If we're diving into spoilers, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, we'll go right for it.
Like so, right at the beginning, they're talking. They're in the blown up sanctuary or like the cantina place that got nuked by the Pike Syndicate
Yeah,
the day before or whatever. And so they're sitting there. They got the mods, and Boba Fett's there, Fennec Shan's there, and the Mandalorian is there. And they're debating. Okay, so the Pikes they're gonna make their move. They have lots and lots of troops, lots of muscle. We need to make a stand, like, or we need to leave. And he's like, no, we need to make a stand. And then he's like, we're gonna go back to Jabba's or his palace or the palace now, Jabba's palace, and we're gonna
yeah,
hold there. And I was thinking, okay, so we're gonna do like a kind of Game of Thrones kind of siege kind of thing going on. That'd be kind of cool. And
yeah.
then one of the mods speaks up. He's like, no, our fight is here with all the people, our people. Like kind of tries for a speech like that. And
I want to point out that I hate the mods, but go on.
oh, yeah, the mods are hot garbage. um, yeah. Anyway, so he's like, no, we should stay here and like defend the people. And Boba Fett's like, you're right. And so instead of like falling back to like their strategic advantage in their fortress that they have out in the middle of the desert that they could see anybody coming, they're like, nah,
Yeah, no, they're
let's divide
let's
our
listen
people.
to these random street people
Yeah,
that were getting beaten up before we did anything.
these
Clearly, they know the best choice.
the street gang that how they were introduced, they were literally stealing water from the very people they now want to quote unquote protect. Even though
Yeah.
throughout the episode, I don't see any people until the end. I don't see a single civilian in the city. Anyway, so he's like, and Boba Fett, after like, he's made so many bad decisions throughout the series. And anyway, he's like,
Yeah.
you know what? You're right. We're gonna stay here and we're gonna protect the people. And so like with like the remaining like 10 people that they have, they split them all up into like all the different sectors of Mos Espa and
As you do.
divides the forces even more into like each one is like in a different one of those crime families that said they were gonna be neutral.
Which you can always trust.
Yeah. But anyway, just like that strategic decision, like that bothered me so much. And then the fact, like throughout the battle that ensues shortly afterwards, uh, there's like I said, there's no civilians. Like there's where are the people? There's nobody there. Like it's just
I
a
never really
big
thought about that.
shoot me up, and like nobody goes down. Like none of the mod, like a few of the mods go down, but like none of the mods really go down, except for
Yeah.
the Gamorrean guards. They kind of bit the dust, but
That that hurt. They were probably like my favorite characters of the whole thing.
yeah,
And like I knew it was happening. Like anytime you see a character that's even close to a cliff or any kind of drop, it's like, well, this is the end. But I didn't think they'd do it. I didn't think they'd kill those two. I thought they were
and then
like
they
I feel like they're not fan favorites, but to me they're.
right, and then you go on, and so they bring Cad Bane back in the previous episode,
Yeah.
and so of course like the unfinished like Clone Wars episodes that didn't air with the final season, there was supposed to be a standoff between like Boba Fett and Cad Bane, where like that's where Boba Fett gets like the dent in his helmet. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. It's I don't know
Yeah.
if it's canon, but anyway, Boba Fett is supposed to like kill Cad Bane in that scene. Anyway, that doesn't happen, and so they try to do it here in live action, like basically 29 years later, and like the duel was just so lame in my opinion. Like they tease it first, like throughout the episode, which is fine, build up the hype. Then the duel happens,
Yeah.
and Cad Bane's got him, like he's got him beat. And if you watch
Oh,
the
100%.
episode closely, Boa doesn't have his gaffy stick on his back, like through the whole through the whole thing. And then just during that scene, he has the gaffy stick on his back to like beat Cad Bane. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Plot armor. It's plot armor.
Well, Beskar is literal plot armor. Like the boys took so many
Well,
shots.
yeah. Just I don't know why they were even cowering because like they stood at their decision. Him and Mando was, hey, let's just walk out of this place that's surrounded and just get absolutely blasted and be totally fine, and it worked. Like I don't understand what they were worried about. They
Yeah,
there were
it's
there were a
messy.
lot of it's it's another one of those things where I'm even more appreciative of Infinity War because it was the like this felt similar where it was like, okay, everything's against the good guys. Like realistically, they shouldn't have a chance, or if they do get out of it, it's gonna be with heavy losses. Like realistically, Mod should have died, and I don't know if the Wookiee whose name I'm forgetting should have realistically made it out of that or not. But like part of me wanted them to lose because that's what should happen. And it gets so frustrating when they just get this insane plot armor where just, oh, everything went right. It just happened to go how the one way out of a million that Doctor Strange predicted that it needed to go for everything to work. And that whole episode was like, oh, yeah, well, someone's probably going to die here, or they should lose this fight, or fall back, or whatever. And it was just, oh, no, everything worked out fine. And the Rancor, uh, I didn't like the whole King Kong blatant referencing there.
When he was
I think it
climbing the
was too.
tower, I was like, "Oh, that's what we're doing."
It's like it's not subtle at all.
No.
It's just a blatant knockoff. Like I felt like I was watching 7, 8, and 9, where it's just exactly the same with a reskin. Like it felt so dumb.
And
Like none of it felt.
they have those beautiful new Scorpion droids or the Droideka knockoffs, right? The giant Droidekas, basically.
Yeah, like I figured they were just a continuation of the Droideka because it's been what, like 30-ish years since the ones that we see in episode 1, 2,
Yeah.
and 3 were made, so it kind of made sense. But
And like it was a new type of shield that I'd never really seen, where like you couldn't even pass through it. Like norm, like the meta is to like just go walk through the shield when the droid isn't looking at you, and then
yeah,
just slice and dice there. But the dark saber couldn't even go through the shield part. Like that was like I don't know if he tried to like just put his hand through after, but like it just seemed like he couldn't. But anyway, the droids come in,
yeah,
they come blasting everywhere. But like there's like a scene with like Boba Fett and Mando just standing in front of a droid that just can't hit them, like like
yeah.
like
It
literal
doesn't.
garbage aim. And then when they're all hiding in like that one like sand building, they're like we have to hold our ground here or whatever. And it's getting
Yeah,
blasted for like 20 minutes, and there's just it's like you're playing Battlefield 2042 and like there's no destructible cover
yeah.
whatsoever.
You can hit it with anything and it's fine. Yeah,
Yeah, like
it's like the riot shield that can withstand the tank shots. Just no, we're good.
it's just absolute hot garbage. But like I said this on like on that other podcast that I did right quick, but like even the most boring Star Wars is still Star Wars to me. So like I don't care. Like it's still entertaining for me to watch in the moment. It's after when you think about it, like how bad it really is.
It never really felt super Star Warsy to me. Like the biggest thing right away that kind of irked me was you never get the Star Wars music, like the brassy music that Star Wars is known for. And I mean, the intro is good, it's catchy. I don't mind it. But like there's no real soundtrack in any of the episodes, it feels like. And that's a big part of like what makes me realize I'm watching something that's actually Star Wars. So
Yeah,
that
it's
always kind of irked
definitely
me, and
yeah.
like it feels like a space western, which I mean you could say that Star Wars itself kind of was to start with, but I don't know, it didn't. If you took out Boba Fett, it's not Star Wars basically. Like it just
The worst part is if you took out Boba Fett, none of the events would actually change. Like he did nothing for the entire
yeah, he was just a
series.
placeholder,
Like we can talk
really.
about the series as a whole now. Like I don't know, like the last episode was
Yeah.
all right. Like as a Star Wars show, probably 6 or 7 out of 10. As a Boba Fett show, 2 out of 10.
Well, he wasn't even in 2 episodes. Like, how do you manage that? Like, I understand that they want to move Mandalorian forward, but like, cut it down. Just figure out, either cut it down or have it spread out over more episodes where he's in like portions of each episode instead of just taking a whole episode for his little adventure. And yeah, it didn't. I don't think it did justice to the character of Boba Fett at all. Like in the original trilogy, he was this like cold, quiet killer who everyone found so cool, and then you get when just the image of him I can't get out of my head is when he's on the stupid speeder bike and he's got that big dumb smile
Like a
trying to show the
Bantha.
Tusken Raiders. Yeah, like that's not Boba Fett.
But like it's
Like
crazy how they think they can get away with that character change, right? So like Return of the Jedi, he gets yeeted into the Starlight Pit, all right? And he goes
yeah,
down there, he's all messed up. He finally makes it. We don't know how long it's been. It was probably a good day or whatever. Because like the
yeah,
wreckage is still smoldering. Like he was probably in the Starlight Pit for like a day, you know? Because like he only had a little bit of that oxygen. Like he had to get out of there. But
yeah,
he gets out, gets picked up by the Tuskens. We don't know how long he's with the Tuskens because like it just like the timing of the show is so weird. But in that time, you're telling me he changes from that cold, like even if you watch like the Clone Wars, right? Like the kid, Boba Fett as a kid saw his dad's head chopped off and then tried to kill the man who did that. You know what I mean? Just like
yeah,
an actual vengeful person. Then he becomes like a bounty hunter, and you see a couple episodes of him in the Clone Wars when he's like in adolescence. You know, in that 3 years or whatever, he's probably like I don't know, 14,
like
and
12,
he's like wielding
13, yeah,
dual blasters and absolutely annihilating like enemy forces and stuff like that. Just not giving a care. Works for the
yeah.
Empire during the Dark Ages. Like he just, how does he change so fast overnight?
Yeah, and like I don't think there was ever a time where it really emphasized that he even had morals, really.
No.
Like the only thing he ever did that was like, I guess, quote unquote good was make sure Han was alive, but that's only because that's Java wanted him alive. Like he cared because of the money, not because like he cared about whether Han lived or died.
Yeah,
And
100%.
and now he's got this big moral dilemma of like, oh, the Sand People, they're misunderstood. I gotta help them. Like it's I
So,
I understand like if he helped them enough to get out of there, but like all the stuff that they did where like he became part of their group and stuff like that, I don't think that was really that accurate. And also, how did that stormtrooper get in there?
well, he could have just been
Like,
some poor bugger like on a dewback, just on patrol,
and
or
he just got put there for a while. Like,
maybe when Vader was looking for R2 and 3PO out in the Dune Sea there from the escape pod, 4 years
so way
earlier.
back in episode 4,
Yeah, it was
and
only
he's
four
still just
years
chilling
ago.
there. I wanted to go back and look and see if he was even a sand trooper, or if they just
I
threw in
think
a
it's a generic.
generic stormtrooper.
I think it's a generic one.
It's not
But do
supposed to be.
stormtroopers even have O2 like that? Like how he ripped the tube out? Don't get me wrong, I love the
Like,
Sarlacc pit scene. Like that was the most Boba Fett that I thought the entire show was.
well, it was the only part that made sense. Like realistically, like yeah, he had to be there, but other than that, not really.
But
But yeah, it's a typical Disney thing where it has lots of inconsistencies and stuff too, and they try and make everything like happy and everyone's a good person, like the heroes are good, and that's just Star Wars wasn't that. Like it was always kind of a grungy time. Like not it, they were sad movies. Like everyone
like the
had
rebels
someone
are
that died
losing.
or like everything else.
The
Yeah,
rebels they're getting creamed.
like
Like most of the
you see
time.
them get massacred right off the start in the Tantive Four, and like everything's desperation and stuff like that. Leia gets tortured off screen by the interrogation bot, and like it ends with Luke having to watch his father get just cremated because he more or less killed him, but also kind of saved him, and like that it it was never this super happy everything's going great yay type situation that Disney just tries to make everything into.
Oh, but Coco, none of them were wearing Beskar armor. That's why the rebels were getting creamed.
Oh god.
And
I
they didn't have modifications.
yeah, like
Like the series opens up, right? And so he kills Fat Bib Fortuna off the chair, right off of Java's throne. And it's
it,
like, okay, I'm taking over now. And then you go for another like 7 episodes. Wait, why did you want to take over? Like what what even Cad Bane asked him like right at the end. He's like, "What's your deal? Like what are you doing?" And then
yeah, because it was never his thing. Like he was
no.
always like a nomadic bounty hunter.
Like Fennec is definitely the star of the show for me. Like she's the one doing all the
Yeah,
gangster, like all the actual muscle work, and she even has the brains to follow that up. Like even in the briefing, like she's laying out the plan. Like Bubba isn't saying a word.
he's just there for the title and viewership. Like it's really not his story at all. He spends half his time just sitting in the back to tank.
Yeah,
And
and
I didn't like what they did with Cad Bane at all.
no, they brought him into live
Like,
action and killed him.
yeah, like there wasn't enough time for people that aren't like that haven't seen all the Clone Wars and everything else to really know even who he is or any of his backstory really, or to get any type of attachment. So he was just like to someone that didn't know really. He's just an outside nobody character that has 2 episodes where he dies. And like you said before, he clearly like he had the win. He could have killed Boba no problem whatsoever. And I kind of understand like if he's hesitant to do it, but there's no way he's losing that fight. Like he should have had it no issue. And I kind of hope that he would get away or something so they could keep him as a character, although he's getting old. So it would get to the point where either they're unrealistically stretching his lifespan or
Well, we
he
don't
had to
know.
die.
We don't know how long that species lives for anyway. That's the thing
Yeah, I
about
can't
Star
remember what he
Wars, right?
is.
It's
I
like a
also didn't like
Doros
the.
or
Yeah, it's just the weird tubes that throw me off. But I didn't like his face either. It felt like a Sonic thing. Not as bad as Sonic. Sonic was obviously horrible, but he looked like he got stung by a bee
I was
several
just thinking
times.
about that. I was just about to
He's
describe
so
it like that.
puffy.
Yeah, it's
And
just
like,
like the old man swelling.
but like, I understand how he has more of like a washed out appearance now. Like, yeah, he's getting old or whatever. But normally, old, you sag or something. You don't get puffy unless you're like a celebrity that had a bunch of plastic surgery go wrong or something.
But
But
you're talking
like,
about how humans age. Like we don't know how a Doros ages. That's how you get away with that.
yeah, I guess there's so many just
But
escape
why does
hatches
Cad Bane
for the
even
Clone
hang
Wars.
around for that duel though? Like Cad Bane, like okay, let me ask this question first. What percentage of Star Wars fans do you think have even seen a single episode of the Clone Wars?
Of Star Wars fans, like
Yeah,
people, I'd
people
say
who would watch
probably.
this.
Well, the weird thing about this is it seems like it's drawing in a lot of people that aren't super big Star Wars fans, but just know Boba Fett. Like, it was a good idea to use him as a poster child for a show, just because he ended up being so like iconic and popular.
Yeah, he sold
But
the
I
most
feel like,
toys.
yeah, I feel like people like just in general that are watching it, whether they're really quote unquote fans of Star Wars or not, I feel like it's probably maybe 25% have seen Clone Wars, but not anywhere near enough to really know Cad Bane's like whole overarching story or care who he is.
Right.
Like,
Like if our like if your parents were to watch it, right? I don't know if they did or not.
no.
But like they let's say your dad watched it, right? Like he's seen the original trilogy, obviously,
Yeah.
and probably the prequel trilogy. But like
Yeah.
then he's like, oh wow, Boba Fett, like it was my favorite action figure as a kid. I'm gonna watch that. And he sits through it all, and he's like, "Who's that blue bugger that just showed up in the cowboy hat? Am I supposed to care? Like what?"
Just that absolute nobody that gets blasted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if it's somebody that's like tech savvy, like immediately they're gonna go on YouTube, and then the first thing in the recommended because everything's connected and everything's listening to what you're doing, it's gonna be like, "Wow, find out everything about Cad Bane here," with a giant clickbaity title and big picture
Yeah.
of the big blue guy's face. But
A big red arrow pointing at him when he's the only thing on the picture.
that's right.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so like, why
Like,
does he stick around for the duel? Like Cad Bane, like if you know him, he's not sticking around. His employers just lost. They lost the battle. He's literally the last one. Like he's not one to take on a Wookiee, Boba Fett, like everybody. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, he was
Mando.
a smart character, and like he never really had an attachment to anything. It was always just, yeah, this is my job.
I just am here for the money.
It's, yeah, like, so once that's done, he like, I guess they were trying to say like, oh, it's like a vendetta between the two of them or something, but it shouldn't be. Like, he shouldn't care. He should be like, oh well.
Well, I think there's a
And
missing arc.
realistically, it's a desert. It's just the whole planet is a desert with nothing on it. I'd be gone. I'd be like, yep, nope, see you. Have
Yeah.
fun. Do whatever you want with the nothing planet.
Well, I think there's like a storyline somewhere. I don't know if it's a book or a Clone Wars arc where like Cad Bane kind of took Boba Fett under his wing when he was younger, and like that's why he gets to be
Yeah,
quote unquote so good.
yeah, because the story is supposed to be like Django knew Cad trained Boba, and it's like a weird mentor scenario in Book of Boba Fett, I guess. But
Because Cad Bane wanted to
he,
train Boba to be as good as Django because Django was the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. So he wanted to train him, but Django was dead. So he wanted to train up Boba so that Cad Bane could defeat him, like the knockoff Django Fett as Boba Fett, so he could
yeah,
claim being the best bounty hunter in the galaxy.
yeah. So I guess I could say it's like an ego thing that he stayed, but he was always like a really smart character in the Clone Wars. So I don't think it's really super accurate to his character.
Do you
like
think
how they portrayed him.
do you think they'll ever do like a special edition of Empire Strikes Back when Vader's talking to all the bounty hunters on the Star Destroyer bridge
And Cad
and
Bane's
they
there.
throw Cad Bane in the back there?
God, I hope not. I
That'd be
really hope
fun.
not.
I was really hoping we would see Bosk, to be honest. I had a feeling Cad Bane was going to show up because, like, before the last episode 6, you were thinking, like, okay, like, why are the Pikes such a big threat? Like, they have to have somebody on their side. And, like, Dave Filoni is directing the next episode, so there's going to be Luke, there's going to be
Yeah.
Ahsoka, and there's going to be Cad Bane. Like,
Yeah, who just happened to walk all the way through the desert just to make an entrance in a tiny village.
also, R2D2 did more in that series, in the Boba Fett series, than he did in the entire sequel trilogy.
Oh yeah, he just went catatonic after. Like probably as soon as he got back from that flight, he just shut down. Like, it, it's so stupid. I wasn't surprised by Grogu taking the armor though, and like one, I figured they would do it because then if he chose to stay with Luke, they'd have to somehow write that in and make it make sense for the backstory that they told about like Kylo and everything else. So I figured they'd just avoid that hassle. And two, uh, the Mandalorian series, half the people were just watching it for Grogu anyways. So it was a super predictable thing. But
Well, as soon as he started building the N1 starfighter and the droid port was like hollowed out with the bubble, you knew what was going to
yeah,
happen. You knew that they were going to be reunited because as soon as you seen the bubble, you're like, you know, Grogu is going to be in the little bubble, right?
yeah.
Like, there's no way. And I wonder. It makes me wonder though. Like, I wonder. I don't want to say if they like it got Disney-fied, where like I wonder if that was the conclusion of their story at the end of Mandalorian season 2, which like I'm sure you're spoiled by now. Like, obviously gets taken by Luke, right? Like,
Yeah.
because you've seen that in this show now. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And but like I wonder if like he was supposed to be with Luke longer. I wish he stayed with Luke a little longer because like I wonder if Disney was like, nope, nope, we gotta sell more Grogu toys. You gotta make him
Oh,
in Mando
I'm
season 3.
100% sure they were doing that.
You know what I mean? So like I don't like that side of it.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't watched the first two seasons of Mandalorian to really like no, but it seemed pretty clear that Grogu was a big money maker, so splitting him up from the Mandalorian just it didn't seem likely at all.
Yeah, I just like now that you've seen that, like I don't even know if you should watch the Mandal. Like, is it even worth the time?
Yeah, like
Like, there's good stuff. Like, I don't even want to talk about it in case you want to watch it.
at some point I probably will, but I don't think I'll super enjoy it. Like if I had to choose between watching the Clone Wars or watching Mandalorian, I'd watch the Clone Wars because it actually feels like Star Wars.
You watched season 7
Mandalorian,
that was out, right?
uh, Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I'm far behind on the Clone Wars too. I've been slacking because there's just so many episodes to go through, and trying to remember where I got to is usually what throws me off. Because like I
Well,
don't want to start right from the start because I've seen probably the first three seasons, like every episode.
you should
So
do
just
the
figuring out where to pick it up is tricky.
chronological watch, I think, is the best way to go about that. If you just go to StarWars.com, they have it. Like, because it's not in chronological order, right? Like, they're all over the
No,
place.
yeah,
Until you get to, like, season, like, 4, then they're kind of in order.
yeah, but they were always good. Like I don't think I ever saw one where I'm like, yeah, that sucked. That didn't feel like a good Star Wars experience or anything. Like they were always entertaining and
Oh, they're so good.
good actual stories to them.
It's unfortunate that the Bad Batch, I think it's subpar compared to the Clone Wars, but I wonder what season 2 will have. Like, it only had one season so far, and I watched all that.
Yeah,
Um, but I, so like Star Wars is trying to like obviously they're both owned by Disney, but I think they're trying to make up for like their past quote unquote like not failure financially, but just failure with like the fans with the like the sequels and everything they're trying to pump out by kind of like doing the Marvel thing where everything has to connect in like a linear timeline now, and every show has to have like a cameo of another character that people are like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then they can use that to be like, hey, tune into this other show to see what that person is doing.
For sure, yeah. Like at the end, like the post credit scene for Boba Fett, like you're like everybody was like, well, on the internet that I can see was everybody was so disappointed with the post credit scene. I was like, what were you hoping was going to happen? Like the post credit scene is Cobb Vanth in the back to tank getting modded, showing that he's going to live. But it's like, what did you think was going to happen? Like a little, like a CGI Harrison DH Harrison Ford was going to show up. Like what were you hoping for? Like not everything has to be like a wham blam, thank you ma'am cameo. You know what I mean? Like Luke is cool. Like it makes
Yeah.
sense for Luke to be in there if they were doing that Mandalorian side story. And like it's story wise, it makes sense for him to show up at the end of Mandalorian. But like, don't just start throwing characters in for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a weird ending just because it kind of makes it seem like there is going to be another season of Book of Boba Fett or something when I feel like there shouldn't be. Because I feel like they didn't really have much of a story to start with. It was just, okay, he's alive. And then they kind of worked with it and stretched it out. But now I feel like if they continued with his story, it would just keep getting worse.
Yeah, I don't need a season two. If they have one, of course I'm gonna watch it. But I don't see any need. I think they're just gonna continue with the Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian is gonna be like the base storyline that all of these knockoff shows are gonna intertwine with. Like they're gonna fill in the gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. I think there's gonna be like a Thanos event like after a couple years, and it's gonna be like Grand Admiral Thrawn that's in there.
I'd like to see him more. I've known about him ever since the books that now aren't canon. But like, I still wish they just went with the old canon, what is now Legends.
Right.
It was such a better just overall storyline. Like the story of that, it had Thrawn. Basically, Thrawn took over after six when the Emperor died. Luke and Leia, they have kids. They start training them as Jedi, so that part's similar. And you end up finding out that, like, the interesting thing about that storyline that I really liked was the Emperor, he wasn't actually just doing everything for power. He was doing it to protect the galaxy
From
because
the
you find
Vaughn,
out that there's an invasion happening, basic like that. He pulled a Doctor Strange, looked into the future and said, "Oh, we got trouble coming." And everything he did to consolidate power to then protect the galaxy from that invasion.
from the
And
Yuuzhan
like,
Vaughn, who are like immune to the Force and stuff like
yeah,
that.
so it made his character a lot more interesting. I mean, he had an interesting character to start with, but to bring in the question of like, well, is he right? And I think that would have been so much cooler than, oh yeah, he cloned himself and disappeared for a long time and then came back on a planet where the ships can't leave the surface and then died, which was just a horrible storyline.
You're just making me think of like MCU and like Thanos. So like I know you haven't seen the Hawkeye show, but like Hawkeye's been through some stuff, right? At this point in the MCU, like he has had to deal with a lot of crap, and
Well,
his
he's turned himself into like a cold blooded killer at one point.
well, like right, but like after that, then the loss of Natasha, like right, like
Yeah.
he's like suffering, and his show like kind of dives into that. But like in the first like 5 minutes of his show, this is like after the snap
Oh, I know what
to
line you're
back.
talking about.
Yeah, and like he goes to like just rock a piss at the urinal, and he looks down like it's if some shitty grade 8 graffiti is like written on the top of the urinal, and it says Thanos was right. Like, can you imagine?
I mean, that's realistic though. Like I know that would
That's
happen.
the most down to
I
earth thing I've seen.
100% believe it. Yeah.
Oh, I
Cuz
just
like
that is the
even when that
funniest.
movie came out, there were people that, like, there was that debate of like is he justified in doing it? And like you can kind of go either way with it, but I 100% believe that and agree with it. And another thing that did that was Far Cry 5, I think it was. The main villain of that, he's perceived as like this religious nut job, and like he's taking over the area basically, and going on about the end of days and stuff like that. And everyone just thinks he's a nutcase, and you as the main character end up fighting him, taking out like it's a whole family, you take out the whole family and stuff. And then at the end, it has two endings. Basically you confront him and his like gang of remaining bodyguards and stuff. And you have two choices for the ending. One is you try and take him in and arrest him, or well, okay, I'll do the other one first. You either take him in or you let him go basically, and you just say that you're gonna leave. Um, so if you let him go, he actually ends up like convincing you that he's right, and he has like this gas that he uses to basically brainwash people. So you fall under that as you leave, and it's kind of like a cliffhangery ending like that. And then if you try and take him in, you fight with him, and then you find out that he's actually right, because he was saying that it was going to be like a nuclear end of days type thing, and as you're fighting him, bombs start going off, and he knocks you out and takes you into a fallout shelter. And that's the kind of thing I like, where it's like, okay, now instead of just being this one-sided character where it's like, yeah, you're clearly wrong, he's just a psychopath, I have no bad feelings about killing him or anything like that. When the character actually has like motives where it's like, okay, well, maybe that like they were right about this or something like that, where you have to consider, should we kill this person? Or even like Gears of War 3, the Queen, that was another one. Like, I didn't want her to die. Like, you kill her in 3.
Once you find out
And
more about her and what her whole deal is, right?
yeah, because you find out like it's perceived at the start that, you know, the horde, they're just coming, they're killing everybody, they're monsters, they just want all humans to die. And you find out as you go through the games that they're running for their lives basically. Like, they're fighting to stay alive because you've got the basically infected versions of themselves that are poisoned from what's underground, the lambent and everything. And you find out like they're entirely justified in trying to get above ground to get away from those, and they just ended up fighting with humans for it. And like, you find out that she was human too, and everything, like all the the horde is all at one point human and everything. I thought it was such a great story, and I wish that you didn't kill her, because I feel like they could have made a better story including her instead of what they did with 4 and 5, which I didn't really like that much. But just making characters deeper and not just having everything being a one-sided thing where it's like, yeah, this one side is always totally right, the other side is totally wrong, which it just seems super 2D, and I hate. And that seems to be what everyone does, because it's feel good, which is again why I liked Infinity War so much, because Thanos was actually a character that mattered and was semi right.
Well, sometimes a whole story, like the hero struggle, it's all about the villain. If you don't have a good villain, then why does anybody give a shit, right? Like if you have nothing, like the villain needs to be again not just two dimensional, like you were saying. Thanos was a great villain. Like I hear that from so many people, and I agree with it that it's a controversial thing. We're like, you know what? He's probably right. I'll take a gamble with that. Yeah, but at the same time,
Yeah,
you want the
like,
heroes to win and overcome and beat them. But it's so nice that the heroes actually lose. Like it's such a greater story. Like if you have like a trilogy or a two-part movie, you don't want the first part to be like all feel good and happy. Like we like people, maybe not everybody agrees, but I love a good fall. Like every hero needs a fall or group of heroes, because there needs to be that. It just makes the conclusion so much more epic that they've overcome all odds instead of just being overpowered and overtaking them. I think Star Wars has always struggled with that, with like the Jedi and the Sith. Like that just seems to be like black and white, good and bad. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, like I hate that. So just the thing where it's like there is always a clear cut person that is right and person that is wrong. And I mean, even outside of like games and movies and stories, you see it in history. You see it with even just people arguing on the internet. It's always I am right, you are wrong. I am the good guy, you are the bad guy. When in reality, it's party A believes in this, party B believes in this, and there's a middle ground somewhere where maybe the bad guy isn't entirely wrong or they're semi justified or whatever. And even the good guys might not necessarily be totally good, like kind of like what they did with Hawkeye, where he's not like a clean cut, super great guy. He went kind of off the deep end there for a while because he was justified in doing so to an extent. But like when you have someone that's just squeaky clean against just evil, it's so boring and overdone, and it it's the typical Disney thing to do. Besides what they did with Thanos, pretty much that like it's I hope they stop doing it. Like I'd really like to see a story where there's two people and you don't necessarily like it's not everyone agrees this one is the hero and this one is the villain. And like at least for part of the story because like just the Disney formula is it's so overdone for me. I'm tired of seeing this hero is against overwhelming odds against them. Oh, plot armor, or in the case of Boba Fett, Beskar armor. They're fine.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'd love to definitely see like a mix up and like you said, the Disney formula. But like so many things are doing it. Like I hope that the new Halo series that's coming out is actually going to show a bit of that gray area. Um, like retelling the story of Halo. It's already renewed for a season 2. I don't know if you've seen that or not,
No, that's
but
kind of surprising.
yeah, it's already renewed for a second season for Paramount. But
Hmm.
like, I don't want every movie. Like, don't get me wrong. I love like my guilty pleasure movies where there is just a clear cut good and bad, where I don't have to think about it. I'm just there for the ride. You know what I mean? Like Transformers to me, like the Decepticons are the bad robots. Like I don't think there's any there's any questioning that, and I'm totally fine with that.
Not in the movies, but in the comics and some of the games, they did actually dive into that a bit of the ethics. Where, and I think there's one line, in like Transformers 3 or something, where you kind of see it, where you realize, hey, what the Decepticons are trying to do is just save their planet, but I don't think it does a good job of like conveying that like what they're doing is kind of justified at all because obviously we have a bit of a bias towards humans. So no one's gonna say, yeah, we should die for these robots. So I don't think it did a great job of that. But that one at least, well, in 3 for the most part, it had the fall, like you were saying, like halfway through 3 when just everything's looking bad. The Decepticons have Chicago pretty much locked down and everything. And I think that's what made the Autobots actually coming back just so much better too. Like if it was always pretty clear that the Autobots had a good chance, it wouldn't have had the same effect. Like when you first see Optimus come back. Okay, so since people will only be able to hear me, just to clarify for people, we lost Sock's recording there. So he's still here. It's just he lost that last minute. But yeah, we'll wrap it up here to avoid technical difficulties. But yeah, if you managed to make it this far, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it, or listening. Eventually, we'll get back on Spotify and stuff. I just haven't had time to look. But yeah, really appreciate the viewership. If you liked it, feel free to drop a like. If you aren't subscribed, subscribing is free, helps us out a ton. Same with telling your friends, really helps us out. Appreciate everyone watching. We'll be back next week. Always the same day. We've never changed up what day. But yeah, I'm TMT Coco. I was joined by Lick My Sock 117, who is gone for this part of the recording. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, and bye bye.